Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 18, Week 7 Power Rankings. We've got 1 week left. Most, if not all, of our playoff spots are locked up. Let's find out what that's going to take to see maybe even more than 8 teams in. I am your host, IllLogic. I'm the coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
We've got one whole transaction to go through, the last one of the season with the trade deadline at the end of this week. And that is going to be my own Buffalo Bouffalant, actually trading Terra Captaincy away from Porygon 2 and onto Great Tusk. Steve, I could obviously speak about this pretty well. Great Tusk is a great mon. It would be nice to give it some options to resist some of those special attacks coming in. Porygon 2 not coming as much, even if it is a neat option to use Terra Blast with its normal typing, always stab, which is pretty neat there. But just seems to make sense to take advantage of the high-powered offensive environment that we are in with this season.
Yep, that's definitely the case. As you mentioned, I really do like normal type special attackers having it. Porygon 2 can have Terra Blast assets, stab normal option, but if it needs to Terra into the offensive type and change its coverage for Terra Blast, it's always a great tool, especially Porygon 2. I forget if it actually gets adaptability or if that's just the Porygon Z thing. But regardless, fantastic piece. But of course, as you mentioned, Great Tusk coming to nearly every match, if not every match. Always having that option, even if it's not the primary option you're looking at, it could certainly turn matchups, having the ability to Terra out of some weaknesses or maybe pick up some extra strength on an important coverage option or stab move to, turn the tide of a specific battle. And you'll always have that option with it because it's always going to be there, unlike Porygon 2, which kind of, matchup to matchup. And that's just kind of the cost we have of, the system we're running right now with both these guys costing the same. Yeah, why wouldn't you have the higher tier option be the Terra Captain? So it is what it is.
Absolutely. I'm a coach that has invested a lot in the top 2 or 3. I believe with Terra cost involved, I have the highest cost for my top 3 months, but it seems to be working out pretty well so far. We're going to see how well it worked out for everybody here in Week 7. Week 7, of course, starting off with the Noctowl getting back on track with the 4-0 win over the Pups. Heatran tank Sylveon all day gets a Brox. Clefable seems like the easy D-Knight answer, but Ironhead does flinch out to Helmet Girder. Very neat. Heatran tanks Sylveon again, then Palafin in on Swampert to KO with a Wave Crash. Heatran tanks Latios too, chipping Incineroar a little bit and out to Weavile, but Clefable doesn't mind walling that. Moonlighting up before Girder is sacked, but that is 4 procs of Helmet first, letting Jet Punch Palafin get the revenge KO. Heatran still... Oh, Aura Sphere does some damage to Heatran, but it does swap out to Sylveon, which gets KO'd. Incineroar... Oh, hang on. It's going to KO with Earthquake. Okay, but here's Meowscarada. Play rough, who's going to KO Incin and D-Knight, and I'll take a Lusterpert before KOing Latios too. The Noctowls get the win. Next match, here's a close one. The Incineroar riding off the back of the Marshtomp, as we all expected, to nearly beat the Empoleons 1-0. Starts off strong, the Terra Fairy, Agility, Special Attack boosted Iron Moth, and trades damage with Gouging Fire, then KOs Articuno. But how about this? Vulpix only takes half from Fiery Dance, and then roars out the setup Moth, and then sacks itself to Healing Wish. Oh snap. Venusaur in the Sun, the Incineroar are switching around pretty well here. Kingambit and Marshtomp and Serena swapping in and out to stall at the Sun, but the last of them does go down to Sludge Bomb, though Iron Moth Revenge KOs Venu. Gouging Fire gets the Healing Wish, but Darkspun is a neat answer to that. It wishes up a couple times, taking EQs before roaring in Urshifu. Dragapult is a decent answer, but the bear Terra's Ice lives to Draco thanks to AV and KOs back with Ice Spinner. Marshtomp gets up the late rocks, then Darkspun goes down to Flash Cannon from Hydreigon even at 3. Hydreigon and Kingambit trade damage, but Sucker Punch finishes off the Dragon. Gouging Fire into revenge that, as well as Iron Moth. What can Marshtomp do? It only takes 20 from EQ, and 2 it KOs back, and then Urshifu barely goes down to rocks. A close win that goes the way of the Incineroar. Next up, the Bouffalant win their 6th in a row. This against the Calgary Corviknight. Screamtail helpfully taking away that helmet from Corvin, giving up some choice specs. Nice. It's Slowpoke time. Switching on Rotom on Icy Wind. It misses. Oops. But with Eviolite, it should live T-Bolt. Crit. Oops. Sorry, friend. Rotom and Grim trade damage. Corv gets parried by Screamtail and takes a huge chunk from Volt Switch and Helmet. Grim takes another chunk from Rotom and Helmet. And then Chenpao takes a chunk from Volt Switch too. Corv sacked to Great Tusk. Calgary does get Chenpao in position to grab the KO. And Screamtail, though, Raging Bolt into revenge on the Mind Games. It eats Sucker Punch and KOs back with Volt Switch. Very nice. Grimmsnarl then sacked to Great Tusk. Keldeo is going to try to do this itself. Scarf Air slash KOing Ogerpon, but a couple of Volt Switches will finish off the Musketeer, and one last headlong rush from Scarf Tusk will finish the game. The Bouffalant keep winning. Halfway through, the Boopers finally back on the board with a win over the Kinglers. Mew skill swaps against Hatterene, letting it get up rocks. Komala trades damage with Hatterene. Mew trading even more with it to finally take it down. Torkoal gets up rocks before letting Chiyu finish off Mew. Vaporeon is a neat answer to that, as well as Walking Wake, who takes a bunch from Alluring Voice. Rillaboom might be an answer to that, but not to Grassy Seed, Earth Stance, Sneasler. Terraflying Acrobatics, down goes Torkoal. Now what? Fake Out is some damage from Rillaboom. Mew turns some more after another SD. Aquajet not doing much at all as Walking Wake is down. Another Fake Out from Rillaboom. Crit! Chiyu sack next, but one more Fake Out, and it means Grassy Glide finally takes down the Sneasler. We are so back. Rotom and Rillaboom trading damage. Iron Valiant has to eat some damage too. Vaporeon in to finish off the Enam, easily tanking Rillaboom attacks before finishing off the last one. The Boopers with the win. Next match, the Boldores were the hottest team in the league coming into their match with the Wobbuffets, but leave as the coldest. A 6-0 for Steve's Wobbuffets. Slitherwing and Bundle trade damage down out to Sinister, who's trying to spread damage with Nightshade, and also getting off a curse into Glamora as spikes go up, plus a Memento into Torn. Oh, what's the plan? Booster speed, Sandy Shocks, plus the Iron Defense. That could be big setup. Earth Power, 20% into Meloetta, and O-Code back with Energy Ball. Yikes. Fast Cloaking gives Metagross a Choice Scarf, then misses a T-Wave into Torn. Then Sinner misses a Wisp into Garchomp, but just goes down. It's all going wrong. Ogerpon does most of Metagross' health, but goes down to Heavy Slam. Glow does too, and Bundle doesn't have boots, so it goes down to the Wobbuffets roll. Finally, the Aggrons get a good win over the Steamrollers, though only a 2-0. Torn gets up Rain Dance and stops Stealth Rock from going up. Along Barraskewda to get out there in the rain. Whimsicott Light takes less than half from Liquidation, but the defense drop. Kraganol sacked instead, and Whimsicott instead chunked as Annihilate comes in. One U-turn boost means Braviary just goes down to one Rage Fist boost. No problem, Terra Fairy Skeldritch can burn the Annihilate, just take under half from the Rage Fist. Miss. Uh-oh, it's good to heal up on Bulk Up, which it's unaware of, and the second Willow does hit the Terra Fairy Annihilate. There we go. Mileshold in against Glysker, who does live the hit and knocks off the wide line, so let's try this again. Whimsicott lives on 5, but does not live the second pop bomb. In comes Skeldritch, no longer immune to it, takes 6 hits, and Willow hits to get the burn off. That could be huge. Gliscor versus Barraskewda, all that poison heal adding up as it lives on 8%, and Dual Wing Beat brings Barraskewda into Life Orb recoil range. The double KO. Roaring Moon is going to have to do this itself with a booster attack. It gets off the D-Dance off on a Volt Switch, and now it just might be over. Acro KOs Urshifu, KOs Mousehold, KOs Torn, Crunch for Toxtricity, and Acro for Annihilate does not KO, but Drain Punch doesn't KO either, so another one finishes it off. Close one for the Aggrons, but they do get it done. That's what happened in week 7. In our power rankings, not all that much movement. Our top 3 are still just absolutely dominating the competition. Noctels, Bouffalant, Wobbuffets, Aggrons, and Incineroars maybe separating themselves a little bit. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. The Boldores have cooled off, Calgary at 7, and Boopers finishing off at 8. Steve, as always, our top 3 only lost to each other, continue to win. Our number 3 team just beat maybe the hottest team in the league, maybe aside from the Bouffalant, 6-0, and they're still number 3. It's very difficult to pick apart who is doing the best between 1, 2, and 3, but they are in a league of their own right now.
Yep, we clearly have these guys set of 3. Of course, all of them just losing to one of each other. Really looking forward to rematches in the finals to see how those go. But in terms of our power rankings here, the Bouffalant right now have a little bit of a differential lead, and the Noctowls a little bit behind in KOs, even though tied in differential with the Wobbuffets. However, we did give the edge into the Noctowls. Notably, the Bouffalant and Wobbuffets, both in this remaining week, will play the 4 and 5 Aggrons and Incineroar. The Noctowls will play the number 8 Boopers. Playing the team, a lot farther down, we feel gives the Noctowls a little bit of an edge to stay with that number 1. As for the Bouffalant Wobbuffets, we could talk about it. I did beat the Boldores, pretty big, hot team. But when it comes down to it, there really hasn't been enough to really change our mind. And last week we were all super close anyways. And, even though in our mind the Noctowls are, clearly one that is clearly by, an inch, and we're way ahead of everyone else by miles. So as it is, keeping Noctowls 1, Bouffalant Wobbuffets, no real reason to change them up this week. We'll keep them as is, Bouffalant 2, Wobbuffets 3.
Remember, a big part of why we have the Noctowls 1, they've gone through a gauntlet of playing so many of these top teams, but hey, if Bouffalant and Wobbuffets come away with wins against the Incineroar and Aggrons respectively, hey, we've gone through a little bit of a gauntlet this season too and come out the other side just the same, so it gets all that much closer, which is absolutely crazy. 4-5, the Aggrons and Incineroar, a couple teams I think are very close to each other, but we're also starting to see a little separation between them and the rest. Did we maybe even disrespect the Incineroar a little bit last week by beating the Boldores ahead of them after their hot streak? Not sure, but we'll talk about it a little bit here. Aggrons and Incineroars, clear second grouping here.
Yes, and while, we certainly have in the past considered mixing them up with the teams below them, and have in cases like you mentioned. What really this week set us aside and really pushed me, at least, and us in general, to mention them as a tier of their own, is they are 2 wins above the teams below them. You'll see it when we get to the standings, but the Aggrons and Incineroar are both at 5 and 2, while Boldores, Calgary, and the Boopers all 3 and 4. So these 5 and 2 teams, the Aggrons and Incineroar, really do stand out above that. They're only 1 game behind the Noctowls, Bouffalant, and Wobbuffets. However, just based on the play we've seen, we certainly still think those top teams are above them. But yeah, really the Aggrons and Incineroar are really establishing themselves here as very much the 4 and 5. We gave the slight edge to the Aggrons, although they are both close, notably because the Aggrons beat the Incineroar, and we felt a little better about them throughout the season. We'll certainly see how remaining weeks affect this. And it'll be very exciting to potentially see a rematch of these teams in the playoffs. But yeah, that's it. The Aggrons, of course, we would consider them dropping below the Incineroar because they did lose to the hot Boldores. And, losing to a team 2 wins below you, could that be worth it? Maybe. But all in all, very close. We'll keep the Aggrons at 4 here, and Incineroar at 5, and maybe the Incineroar will prove us wrong in the weeks to come.
And finally, 6, 7, and 8 are the 3 and 4 teams, all dropping a game this past week, too. It's not looking too great. Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Instead of talking about ordering these three necessarily by who we like the most at this moment, which one of these teams do you think is most likely to actually grab a playoff win? It's really tough to imagine anyone beating Noctell's, Bouffalant, or Wobbuffets right now, but those are the three teams that these bottom three are scheduled to play against right now if the season were to stop. Do you see Boldores, Corviknight, or Wooper having any chance against any of them? Which one do you have any confidence in to be able to take a match against them?
Based on the matches that we've seen so far, it would likely be the Boldores. It's really hard to say that after I just 6-0'd them this past week, but I do recall their match earlier in the season against the Noctowls was fairly close. It was a kind of a back and forth affair that for a while it felt like the Boldores just slowly lost ground and ended up a couple months behind in the end. But that certainly could turn into a win, and maybe they have a better matchup against. I don't believe they played the Bouffalant, so maybe they end up paired against the Bouffalant and have a better match there, or whatever the case may be. But all in all, I think the Boldores, in my mind, are the scariest of the teams. It's a little interesting, as historically of these three teams, they're probably the worst of them. But that hot and cold streak, if you just hit them on the wrong week, that could be devastating.
We saw it finally happen. The Boopers and Empoleons were finalists last season. You just need to get hot at the right time. Boldores is, as you've said, the hot and cold team of the season. Catch them at the wrong time in the playoffs. Maybe they'll make their own run. That could be interesting. I suppose I agree. Boldores have had better highs, I think. The only teams really to disrupt the parity of the season, beating a team above them there and losing to a team below as well. So it goes a long way with trying to figure out what they are, I suppose. The other two teams haven't really inspired much of anything in me. Calgary, I had more expectations for after their transactions, but hasn't done much for me. Boopers, it's about the same team, again, that we've seen from them a couple of times at least. Maybe the league started to figure them out. Boulders may be the most variable. It's pretty interesting there. But that's going to wrap up our power ranking segment here. We've got actually a good bit to talk about with the standings. Steve, I do see 8 teams have clinched. All those 3 and 4 teams have actually clinched because they cannot be passed up by a team below them. But those aren't necessarily the only teams that we have left. Keeping in mind that our playoff system is the top 8 seeds, and anybody who has the same record as the 8 seed, what are we looking at here in terms of playoffs?
Well, the key item here is, of course, those 3 and 4 teams, as those are all the teams at 8th at the moment, or tied for 6th, 7th, 8th, however you want to phrase it. All these teams notably do play other teams, not playing each other. So if all these teams do lose this week, or I'm sorry, if any of these teams lose this week, the 8th place team will only have 3 wins, allowing any 3-win team, of course, of the Empoleons or Kinglers to make it in. Very notably, the Empoleons and Kinglers do play each other. So that matchup between them is not quite a win and in. They do need help, and depending on how scheduling works out for the currently ongoing week, I mean, I'll give you a spoiler. There are games being played before the Empoleons Kinglers, so it very well could be a win and in game, or they may need some help. Thinking a little ahead about the schedule, very notably, the Wooper Boopers play up against the Newport Noctowls, while Calgary and Boulder are playing against teams that have already eliminated from playoffs, being the Steamrollers and Pups. Especially the Boopers looking like that weak point to try and break through. But, of course, Calgary and the Boulders could, falter a little bit. And if any of them do, allows a chance for the 3 and 5 winner of the Empoleons Kinglers to make it in. Otherwise, I'll point out again, you mentioned it in the power rankings, but that 2-win difference between the Incineroar and Calgary. Very notably, though, even with that 2-win difference, the Incineroar only 3 differential above Calgary. Regardless of how that works, though, that much differential very much solidifies what the top 5 teams are going to be. Even within the top 5, based on differential, there's some things that can't change. The Bouffalant are locked into, I believe, a top 3 spot. The Incineroar, I believe, can only get up to the 4 or 5, being so far behind differential every other team. But yeah, a lot will depend on this final week and how those shake out. And the same thing at the bottom end. They're a little closer overall. Still, +3 to -8, quite a wide range. But we'll see where they all end up based on, if any of them drop this week or how it all turns out in terms of differential.
Absolutely. Of note, too, Empoleons Kinglers playing each other. Kinglers can only get up to, I believe, the 9th there and be able to tie Empoleons could get up to the 8 or potentially even the 7 with a little bit of help too. I think could be a little bit fun there too, and even avoid a play-in game entirely, which is pretty neat there. So maybe a good incentive for them to win big, or maybe for even just the Boldores to win a little bit to avoid having to drop into that play-in match. So that's kind of interesting there too. We've got a few things still at play here in the final week of the regular season. Speaking of, let's talk about the schedule. You already mentioned it. The Evergreen and Empoleons Kanto Kinglers playing each other. Only need 1 of 3 games to go their way in order for this to be a win and in, truly and for surely. A couple other 3 and 4 teams playing, but anything in particular aside from the Empoleons Kinglers play-in game that catches your eye here, Steve?
A couple of games that will be very interesting looking ahead to playoffs. The Buffalo Bouffalant versus the Cincinnati Incineroar, and the Waterdeep Wobbuffets versus the Aggrons. Both of the 5-2 teams playing another one of the 6-1 teams. Notably, both those teams have so far only played the Knocked Owls, both of them losing, of course, to the Knocked Owls. So getting their other scheduled matches against the top 3 teams leading into the season and throughout the season here. So it'll be interesting to see how those matches go. Could shake up, of course, playoff seeding, but also a little bit of warm up. All of these teams are locked. All of these teams are locked into the top 5. So these matches could come up in the semifinals, or the potentially even as the 4-5 match, and get kind of those back-to-back matchups in specific cases.
Absolutely. See how seriously they want to take this as a warm-up match for going into the playoffs. See if they want to stay hot, or maybe don't want to reveal too much, and that could be a little deadly. And getting a key loss there at the end of the season, drop 1 or 2 spots for some of us top teams there, could be a big deal there. So that's going to do it for Week 7 Power Rankings, and look ahead to Week 8. We've got a playoff overview for you that we're going to talk about next time. Be sure to come back here, check out what's going to happen in the playoffs as we come down to probably 8 or 9 teams left in the Wooper Club League Season 18. We will see you then.